Good morning and welcome to this Sunday service of the Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, located in Durham, North Carolina, on the ancestral lands of the Eno, the Saponi, Sissipaha, Shikori, and Lumbee people, whose descendants live here and in surrounding communities today. I'm Reverend Jacqueline Brett, and whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your race, gender, whomever you love, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, welcome. If you're new to this community, and especially if you're visiting with us today, please introduce yourself in the chat box so we can give you a warm ERUUF welcome. You'll also find a link in the chat that will help you learn more about us. And if you have not yet attended, we invite you to the Inquirers class for visitors and newcomers, which takes place on Sunday mornings at 9:30 a.m. on Zoom. Information on how to get to Inquirers will appear in the chat box, and you can also access the class via the homepage of our website at ERUUF.org under events. At ERUUF, we love our children, and we've got some wonderful classes for them this year at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. The classes are in person, outdoors, masked and distanced. So check out our offerings on our website or contact our religious educator, Julia Tyler, to find out more about our children's classes and also programs for youth as well. At this time, all our Sunday services, classes, groups, and programs for adults are online or outdoors while the threat from the Delta virus is so high, or the Delta variant of the virus is so high. Check out our website or Friday e-news to find out about all the things, and we have a lot of things that are going on here at ERUUF, including the adult classes on Sunday mornings at 9:30 a.m. After today's worship service, our worship associates will host an online sermon discussion beginning at 12:15 a.m. for anyone who might like to reflect and respond to the sermon with others. You can find the link at ERUUF.org in the events section of the home page. Information will also appear on the screen here at the end of the service. And so, as we've been doing in this past month, I want to give you an update on the 2,500 Hours of Love project that the congregation is engaged in. And so far, we have 2,095 hours pledged. And that means we have 405 hours to pledge to meet our goal of pledging 2,500 hours by November 1st, which is 1 week from now. We can do this. We only need 405 more hours pledged. So if you haven't yet done so, please pledge your hours. Or if you want to increase your pledge, please do that as well. And in addition to hours pledged, we so far have 296 hours that have been completed. And we have a sense that people are doing more than what they have logged. And so we want to encourage everyone to log your hours so that we can show the number, have an accurate sense of the number of hours that have been completed for this amazing project, 2,500 Hours of Love. This morning's service will be led by Reverend Keith Kron, who is Director of the Transitions Office at the UUA. You'll hear more about Reverend Kron a little later in the service. Our tech team this morning are Jenny Jolly and Sean Trumbull. And so now I invite you to join me in just centering yourself. We can all take a deep breath in and let it out. And center ourselves into the time and the place where you are, knowing that you are here gathered with others in community. And so now we continue our service with the prelude with Kate Lewis.
Good morning. Our opening words this morning are by David Breeden, slightly adapted. He says, "Welcome to a new day. Welcome to a day unwritten. We gather to speak of possibility.
We remember the losses. We celebrate the victories as a people committed to life.
We embrace the possible over the probable, weaving a story of hope.
As we light our chalice this morning, join us in the new story of this day that we create together. Join us in the future of possibility."
This chalice is a symbol of the light that our Unitarian Universalist tradition casts for us as we move boldly forward into the unknown with trust in each other and hope for our future. Our first hymn this morning is "This Is My Song." The words appear on the screen, and Pam will lead us, and you can sing along if you wish at home.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands of far and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere mine.
Good morning. My name is Jenny Loom, and I'm a member of the ERUUF Durham CAN core team. In November 2019, as a new member at ERUUF, I heard Heather Ladd speak about the housing crisis in Durham and how eviction can be used to threaten tenants who organize for their rights. I was furious. I asked Heather how I could get involved in this issue through Durham CAN, and she asked me to come observe eviction court with her. That day, I saw a system of abject cruelty that lodged in my gut forever. Now, Durham CAN is returning to court for a systematic court-watching action. We have 3 goals. 1, to understand how the process and causes of eviction are changing in Durham, which will inform our policy positions. 2, to bear witness to the violence of the system. And 3, to cultivate the leadership of Durham CAN members by getting them comfortable in public spaces, such as court. In eviction court during the pandemic, I see violence inflicted on individuals and families, disproportionately Black women. I hear tenants talk about the structural barriers they face to secure housing, and see how little power tenants have in the courtroom unless they have a lawyer. Court watching is heartbreaking, but it is also allowing us to identify winnable issues that could prevent some of the dangerous evictions in Durham. I want to invite all ERUUFians to participate in court watching as part of the 2,500 Hours of Love project. Please contact me if you are interested.
I've been so inspired by the 2,500 Hours of Love project, and gosh, sometimes we put our love into motion and it takes us into difficult places, but that's where love is needed the most. Thank you, Jenny, very much for that reflection. This morning's service is being, a sermon is being offered by Reverend Keith Kron. He's the director of the Transitions Office for the Unitarian Universalist Association, and he helps congregations and ministers as they navigate the ministerial search process. This weekend, he's been with ERUUF, and he led a Beyond Categorical Thinking workshop yesterday for our congregation. That workshop is an integral part of ERUUF's search process, a really important part for your next lead minister. And Reverend Kron will preach this morning's sermon as well. So he's the UUA Transitions Director now, but in the past, he is the former director of the Office of Bisexual, Gay, Lesbian, and Transgender Concerns for the UUA. He held that position for more than 14 years, from 96 to 2010. In that time, in all his time at the UUA, Keith has visited over 450 Unitarian Universalist congregations across our continent, helping them with welcoming congregation work, beyond categorical thinking workshops, and with public witness. He is a former elementary school teacher, and he's also taught online classes for Star King School for the Ministry, our UU seminary in Berkeley, California. He's he's taught classes in children's literature and using them for helping children understand spirituality. He also leads workshops on the Enneagram. He plays and teaches tennis, and he collects children's books. He has over 9,000 children's books, a former teacher and a true lover of literature. Keith is 60 years old and he lives in Providence, Rhode Island. He commutes back and forth to the UUA when they are in person. And so he has 2 readings for us this morning, and he will offer those now.
Emily Bernard is an African-American writer writing about racism. In this short piece, she talks about the night that she was stabbed by a young man with mental health issues and the racism she experienced that night. It happened some 25 years ago. I did experience terrible pain on the night of August 7th. The person responsible for it was the surgeon on call. I lay on a gurney, feeling helpless and afraid. The surgeon walked over and without saying a word to me, or even looking in my direction, plunged his fingers into my gaping wound. I gasped and I immediately grasped his hand. It was only then that he looked at me and said icily, "Don't touch my hand." His eyes were Aryan blue and as cold as his voice. I asked questions about what was happening, and he refused to respond. Only the attending nurses treated me with any kindness or respect. Whenever I tell the story of the night that I got stabbed, I always say the person who did the most injury to me, the one who left the deepest wounds, was not the young man Daniel Silva who stabbed me, but it was the surgeon. This reading is entitled Unclenching. It's about what I witnessed last summer. It was a nearly perfect day for a walk. I wasn't alone. My favorite sighting on my street in Providence was a woman walking her adorable French bulldog down the street. I heard "Good boy, Luke" several times as she pulled slightly on the leash to keep Luke from being too distracted. Around the corner comes a man with a pit bull. Luke, the French bulldog, goes stock still. The pit bull is wagging her tail with the greatest of hope and charm, clearly excited about the possibility of a new friend. She won me over. The woman tries to get Luke to move forward, but it's in vain this time, as the French bulldog is playing statue. Eventually, the man with the pit bull reaches the woman and her dog, and if possible, the dog gets even stiffer. The woman is trying to assure Luke that it's okay, and the pit bull sniffs hopefully and inquisitively at her new wished-for friend. And then, in an instant, the bulldog relaxes and sniffs back, and quickly their tails are all a-wagging as they sniff and nuzzle and snort. And I notice the owners have relaxed too, and they too have unclenched, and they are now talking amiably, though near as I can tell, their tails are not a-wagging with the same ferocity as their pets. It's only then that I realized that I had been clenching, and now feel my own body relaxing. I left the happy foursome and headed off, thinking how much of a metaphor this is for today's times. How we all seem to be living lives of trepidation, and yet hope and kindness are out there if we look beyond the stereotypes, if we present ourselves with kindness, if we just try. I thought about the reputation that pit bulls have, and yet she was the kindest of all. Maybe in these trying and difficult times, we need to be more like the pit bull, in whatever ways we can, offering a little hope and kindness to those new friends we might make.
If we can just get past our stereotypes. I invite you to join me now for a time of prayer and spoken meditation. And these words are adapted from a prayer by Tim Haley. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to give thanks for another day, for all beings who have brought us warmth and love, for the gift of life itself. We are on our pilgrimage on this earth for just a moment in time. Let us open ourselves here, now, to the process of becoming more whole, to living more fully, to give and forgive more freely, to understand each other with more empathy, to lift our attention more often from the mundane, so that we don't miss the wonder and beauty of any of this. This morning, we lift up members of our congregation and our beloved community, this morning, and hold them in our hearts. Susan Spitzer, who requests our prayers while she's recovering from recent surgery. Bob Brown's sister Sonia, who has been in the hospital several times since her aneurysm diagnosis. And the memory of Mary Beth Bishop, whose memorial service will be held this coming Saturday, October 30th at 11 a.m. in the ERUUF sanctuary. And let us take a brief moment of silence as we hold these and other of our concerns in our heart. Together, we breathe in peace. We breathe out love. May it ever be so. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Good morning. It is good to be with you. I wish I could be with you in person. I'm thinking a lot in these times, in these moments, about harm and violence. And in particular, as our congregations gather, our conscious decision not to regather at this moment so we don't do more harm or spread more illness to people, and also to not do harm to the people who would not feel safe showing up, even if we could regather, because we don't want people to be left out or to feel like they don't belong. But I've been thinking about harm and violence long before the pandemic started. I thought about it a lot over a year ago when the man went into the synagogue in Pittsburgh and began shooting congregants, killing many. And just before that, also in Pittsburgh, the news of another Catholic sex scandal. So much harm and violence done, and it made me wonder, why do we trust religion at all? But this makes me think of one of our Unitarian Universalist ministers who's become quite famous, the Reverend Robert Fulgham, who says this about religion. He said, to be human is to be religious. To be religious is to be mindful. To be mindful is to pay attention. And to pay attention is to sanctify existence. And maybe that's what our religion can really be about sanctifying existence to all those who might show up here. All of this has made me think about 2 ministers' meetings I was at in the last couple of years, where I asked ministers to talk about, what is it a congregation needs from you? Part of my job as the director of the Transitions Office is to get ministers to think about what it means to serve our congregations. And so I asked them to create a chart of what a congregation needs from a minister, much like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and to list what they need the most at the base, at the bottom. I was very intrigued that not a single minister in either group said what a congregation needs most from its minister is to do no harm, and what a congregation also needs from a minister is someone that it can trust. This made me think, however, that in all of the different congregational records that I have seen, I've never seen a congregation said what we need most from a minister is a minister who will not harm or build trust. Maybe we need to take a closer look at the basics of what we need from church. And how will we rebuild trust in religion? How do we as Unitarian Universalists show up, not only for ourselves and to each other, but in the wider world? I'm reminded of representing our religion some 22 years ago when I was in my previous position as the director of the Office of Bisexual, Gay, Lesbian, and Transgender Concerns for our Unitarian Universalist Association. I was asked to represent us following the death of Matthew Shepard. If you don't remember Matthew Shepard was a young University of Wyoming student who had been taken by 2 men who did not like him and tied him to a fence and left him to die. I still remember that, standing by that fence where he had been left. And I remember a couple of things about that. I remember the minister of the congregation in Laramie asked me to show up and to say a few words and to lay some flowers later after the service was over by the fence. So I had thought about a few minutes of things that I could say in the church service. And the minister gets up and says, after he says a few words, and now Reverend Kron will lead the service this morning and give his sermon. I don't remember what I said that morning. I do remember that what I could do was show up and be there and just talk about it. Later, when we went to the fence, we'd stopped, we'd each gotten some flowers, which we were going to lay by the fence. And the minister puts down the flowers, turns to me, and now says, Reverend Kron will now deliver the memorial service for Matthew Shepard. I had prepared nothing. but I said a few words, which again, I don't remember. And later, when I asked this minister who was brand new to ministry, why he had done this, and he said, I didn't know what to say. I figured you, as a more experienced minister, would either. And I said to him, I didn't know exactly what to say, but I did know it was important that we're both there and we both be there for the people, to be an example that we could be a different kind of faith. Some months later, in May of 1999, I was visiting a congregation in Colorado, Columbine in Littleton, Colorado, the UU congregation that is the closest church of any kind to Columbine High School. And I was there just some 3 weeks after the school shooting. And I saw there the witness, the faith of what we could do, because I walked into the church building that morning and was amazed at what I saw. Up on the walls of the sanctuary in that congregation, nearly every spot covered was a picture or a letter that had been sent from children in our religious education classes across the United States and Canada, wishing the people of that congregation hope and sending them love. And I can't remember being that close to something so violent, feeling so cared for. And it just made me think, this is what our faith can do. And sometimes just that simple offering of showing up, of being there in some way, matters so much. Researcher Brene Brown talks about how trust is not built in the big moments, but in the little moments of how we show up. And that made me think, if it is built in little moments, then it can also be broken in little moments. And it reminded me of a class that I was in seminary, a class on death and dying. And after that class, I was talking with the professor and the dean of our school, and we were talking about a particular moment that happened. The professor, who worked with people who tried to commit suicide, had been a hospital chaplain with many people who had died, had asked us one day to role play, to sit next to the bedside of a patient who was not only dying, but had an inability to move or be in control in any way. And so one of the students was offering to be the patient, and another student was the chaplain. And the student who was the chaplain went next by to the student's bed and took his hand. And it was that moment that Anna, who was a Holocaust survivor, stood up and said, "Never, ever do that again." And the entire class was stunned. And she looked at all of us and she said, "I want you to think about what just happened. Here this person lays, this patient lays, having no control over anything going on in their lives. And the first thing you did was to take their hand without asking, further reinforcing how out of control they were. What would have happened if you had just simply asked if you could take their hand? Would that have given that patient some control in a moment in their lives where they felt like they had none of it? It was a very powerful learning moment for me, and how each of us needs to feel like we can show up, regardless of what place we're in, with each other and just be who we are. It also reminded me a story of a friend of mine from work who was talking about visiting his son outside of Cleveland. And my friend and his son were taking two of their friends to a Cleveland Indians baseball game. And as they drove by toward the stadium by a UU church, our congregation in Rocky River, Ohio, they all saw on the side of the building a huge welcoming congregation banner, a huge Black Lives Matter banner. And immediately, My friend's son's friends began talking, and they said, you know, if I were going to go to any church, that is the church I would want to go to. That is a church that is truly trying to make a difference in the world. And it made me wonder what would happen if, when we can regather, they could actually show up. Would they find a place that was trying to make a difference? Or would they be asked, as 25-year-olds, to be really part of their community? Or would they say, you are welcome here as long as you give like the rest of us, as long as you volunteer for 14 committees like the rest of us, as long as you act like we do now? Would we ask them to be someone who they are not, to be a part of us? Or could we let them simply be who they are? We often do the same things for people of color in our congregations. As long as you act like us, as long as you think like us. And it has to look like us. It's one of the ways that we really do harm. And it often happens in moments where we're not thinking. A friend of mine, African-American man, Unitarian Universalist minister, showed up at a congregation morning. He'd been asked to guest preach. Showed up in a suit, tie, carrying his sermon in a folder. And the person who greeted him asked him, "Are you here to clean the building this morning?" I can tell you, as someone who has showed up in a suit and tie in over 450 of our congregations across the United States and Canada, no one has ever asked me if I was there to clean. No one has ever thought that I did not belong. And I think about our congregations and what this means for our future. Are we going to continually ask people to say, you have to be exactly like us? Which is in most cases people's in their 60s and 70s and 80s across the US and Canada? Or will we make room for all who we can be as diverse Unitarian Universalists? But in those moments we can be as rigid and violent and fundamentalist as the religious right. We've even had congregations try and say, you can come here as long as you are humanist. And not just any kind of humanist, my kind of humanist. I believe we can be better than that. I believe we can be congregations where we do not eat our classmates, where we can learn side by side, be side by side, and learn from each other. Because my hope is that we can be a better religion than that. This could be a golden age for Unitarian Universalism. Will we reach out to those who need us? Or will we be simply a congregation that says, no, just people like me? Will we circle the wagons? There have been many congregations in search which I have now asked, do you really want a minister who will look to a new future? Or is what you really want to a hospice chaplain? So that a small group of folks who think alike will eventually age and die. These are the questions we need to be thinking about. Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie has this quote, which I often think about. The single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. That they make one story the only story. Will we allow Unitarian Universalism to be more than a single story? Will we allow anyone who comes in to be more than the single story that we think we have to be? Or will we commit little acts of violence and make sure that that one story is our only story? I think we as a faith can be better than that. In these times, how do we unclench? How do we do no harm? How do we choose to pay attention and sanctify existence? How will we be religious? I think about the friend that I talked about, the dean of students at my seminary, who told me this story one time about sitting on a board with the other deans of the other theological schools. And he and his friend from the American Baptist School were having a great disagreement about what direction the school should go to. And he said what fascinated him the most was that the other 7 deans of the graduate theological school spent more time trying to get them to be on the same page and pretend there was no conflict than simply saying, you know what, you all just disagree. And Bob finally asked them, I would rather hear what you believe, because my friend here and I will still be friends after this meeting is over. We just simply disagree. How do we not run from diversity that I think will really strengthen us? How do we let people of different thinking and wonderings be here together? A final story about another way that I learned this happened to me when I first started at the UUA some 25 years ago. I was at a conference, a multi-faith conference in Nashville, talking about all things around religion, gender, and sexuality. There were some 40 different denominations who were there. On one side of me was a man from the Church of God named John, and then on the other side was a man named Mark from the Church of Christ. And John from the Church of God gets the microphone and he introduces himself by saying, "Hi, my name is John, I'm from the Church of God, and I am from the right of the right." And everyone laughs. When he's done, he hands the microphone to me, and I go, "Hi, my name is the Reverend Keith Kron. I'm from the Unitarian Universalist Association. Currently, I'm the director of the Office of Bisexual, Gay, Lesbian, and Transgender Concerns." And it's at that moment I have to stop talking, because John and Mark are scooting their chairs away from me. But when they stop, I say, "And we are to the left of the left." And I have to toss the microphone to John so he can speak. And we spend the next 3 days talking about all things about religion, gender, sexuality. They are stunned to learn that we have more women than men in our congregations, that we are openly welcoming of bisexual, gay, lesbian, and transgender people, that we think comprehensive sexuality education is a must for us to raise responsible adults. And finally, on the last day of the conference, Mark and John and 2 of his friends, who I assumed are named Matthew and Luke, come up to me and say, "We would like to have lunch with you." And I thought, well, this will be fun. But I agreed. And so we sat down to lunch. And Mark looked at me and he said, "We just wanted you to know. We have disagreed with every single thing that you have said. These are not your beliefs. But we want you also to know that we respect you, because at least you are clear about what you believe." And in that moment, they were my teachers. Reminder that we can get along with each other even when we have completely opposite opinions. What was fun about the subsequent conversation is they tentatively asked me if I knew anything about football, and they were stunned to learn that I knew more about football than all 4 of them combined, that I had worked my way through college officiating football. And at that moment, I got to be their teacher too. I hope as we go about the work of doing no harm, of being with each other, that we will not eat our classmates, that we'll see each other as potential learners and teachers for each other, that we will unclench and honor the full humanity of the people who are next to us. That we will treat people not forgetting their identity and what it has taught them, but celebrating who they are and letting them just show up and be the people who are Unitarian Universalists. Because we can be that faith. My wish for you is that you can live into this faith. That you can show up as different people with different ideas and find ways to be stronger because of it. My hope as you move forward in this ministerial search, that the next phase of your life is not one of contraction, but one of opening to a world that really needs our faith. Go be human. Go be religious. Go forth and sanctify existence.
Did you want to cry during that sermon as often as I sat here with tears in my eyes? Oh my word. We do take our love into difficult places, and that is the best of us. And when we do it with confidence, that is what it means to be a faithful Unitarian Universalist, I think. Each in our own way with all of our differences. Oh my gosh. What a gift. This is the time in our service where we have a moment to contemplate all that we want to give of ourselves, our time, our talent, and sometimes our treasure. As we listen to the morning offering, you can contemplate what's right for you in your life. You may have your giving, your financial giving already set up. And so this is a great time to contemplate your time and your talent. If you would like to give online, there's a link in the chat box and you can click on that and that'll take you to our secure portal. And now here is the offertory.
To a world that is changing. Looking out the window got me wondering lately, will we be okay? Will we be okay? One day I can feel the sun shining. Next day a bullet can leave a mama crying. Will she be okay? Will she be okay? Tell me, will we be okay? Will she be okay? Life is taking everything that I have just to survive. I got $25 in my pocket, and I think another 10 in my glove compartment. I'm trying so bad not to cry, but it's hard to stop it. But you say all of my needs, you promise you got it. So I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. Why do we hate one another when love is the most beautiful color? It takes away the gray. Love is beautiful. It makes everything okay. Everything's gonna be okay. Where is the American dream? If only 1% knows what it means to really be okay. Do you know what it means to be? Tell me. trying so bad not to cry, but it's hard to stop it. But you say all of my needs, you promise you got it. So I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. Okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. See, our love is great. This season of pain, it won't last always. Life is taking everything that I have just to survive. You've got $25 in your pocket, and you think another 10 in your glove compartment. But that family with no food would trade places with you. Give thanks and don't forget how you got it, and you're gonna be okay. You gonna be okay. We gonna be okay. Okay, okay, okay. See, I gotta remember that my love is bigger than any battle I'll ever face. So I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. We gonna be okay. We gonna be okay. You gonna be okay. You gonna be okay. You gonna be okay.
Our love is bigger than any of our problems. And when we forget or our energy is low, how wonderful that we're in this together with each other. We give thanks for this beloved community and everything that sustains us here, that enables us to take our love beyond our walls out into the world that is so desperately, desperately in need and waiting for us. That's the good news this morning. We keep hearing it over and over in different ways, don't we? I'm going to offer our closing words now, and then we'll sing together for one last time. These closing words are some that the poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote to a friend in a letter. He said, "Have patience with everything that's unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which would not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live into them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. And then someday, perhaps far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, you will live your way into the answer." Rilke. In this time of change, each of us separately in our own way, we are living the questions, finding a new way forward. All of us together as one community as well. Go in peace, friends. Go in love. The world is waiting for us.
It's a song called Building a New Way. I wrote this quite a while ago, and it traveled around the country. It was in a couple of different women's choruses, at least a couple that I know of, and probably a few more have made their own arrangements of it, and then it appeared in the Unitarian Universalist hymnal, addendum to their hymnal, Singing the Journey, and here's my version of it. So there's many other versions out. Since it's my song, I get to have my own version. We are building a new way. We are building a